I didn't go into this one with any expectations, and I walked out going, wow, that might be one of my new favorite romantic comedies ever. Everybody, welcome back to a brand new movie review. Today I'm discussing A24's Eternity. This is about a girl who, in the afterlife where souls have 1 week to decide where to spend eternity, Joan is now faced with the impossible choice between the man she spent her life with and her first love who died young and has waited decades for her to arrive. This stars Miles Teller, Elizabeth Olson, and Callum Turner. Now, I heard some good buzz coming out of TIFF, but like some of that stuff I kind of just sway under and just go, I'm going to go in with my own expectations. I didn't see any trailers for this. I knew the basic concept and I knew who was in this. And it's funny because I had almost forgotten about the screener. I was kind of losing track of time. Our son just turned 1, so it's been a lot. And my wife goes, I really want to see this movie. And I'm like, oh, I have a screener coming up for this. And I looked and it was literally tonight, even though this review is coming out a couple weeks later. And I said, oh, let me see if I can go. The screening rep, shout out to you. Appreciate you so much for letting us go, because I walked out of Eternity and I'm so happy I got to see this in theaters, but I'm really happy that I saw one of my new favorite films of this year. And this is a movie that honestly had me on the verge of tears for, like, I would say 85% of its runtime. It is such an emotional film, but at the same time, it's also one that provides tons of laughs. Like, I think this is the perfect balance between romance and comedy, and specifically even the high concept that it has here in discussing how, like, the world building of the eternity thing and, like, making it make sense, and also not falling into like having to answer like what is the meaning of life, which so many films that are somewhat like this or have been around the same kind of idea, because this is a very unique movie to its own degree. I was a little worried that it was going to sway more into what is the meaning of life, where like that wasn't the purpose of this movie. The purpose of this movie is like, where do you want to go for your eternity when you pass and go? What is your eternity? Who is your eternity? And like, what can love do, and what did you do in your life? And I think those are the ideas that I think more stem from this movie, and specifically how it's all wrapped around a romantic comedy, I think is one of the strongest aspects of the entire film. So I'm very excited to talk about this movie. Definitely leave your thoughts down below, and without further ado, let's dive right into this. Number one thing I want to talk about is the performances. Now, first off, I love all three of these actors, specifically Elizabeth Olsen and Miles Teller, and I would go as far to say, like, how this film opens up with showing like their older selves, because when they populate into this eternity like waiting room, this limbo style, it's the look of them is when they were the happiest in their life. And when you see the film, you know, they come from being old. And the mannerisms that the older versions of them had is the fact that Miles Teller and Elizabeth Olsen have to play off of those voice, accent, dialect, mannerisms, all of that stuff, just in like a quick, like 5-minute thing. They crafted that so perfectly to the point where you really do believe in that. And you see that. And even the way that they bicker in mannerisms, it's like an old couple bickering all the time. And I absolutely adored that. And they both are incredible. I think Elizabeth Olsen has one of the harder jobs in this film, I will say, though, mostly because she's a character that could easily frustrate others, where it's like, okay, you have these two choices. Well, clearly the idea you should do is spend the person that you've spent the entire life with. But the film does make a lot of like good sways and points to show, well, this is why she should maybe spend it with her first love. While there's a lot of things I disagree on all that, I can see how the film can kind of sway and try to move you through both of them. And a lot of that can be because Miles Teller and Callum Turner both have fantastic chemistry with Elizabeth Olsen. But also, them as characters also grow. And that was actually one of the biggest surprising factors of this movie, was that it could have easily been like gone down the cheesy route of like two people facing each other. And don't get me wrong, they definitely have those moments with one another. But that's the other aspect that I was so surprised by within this movie. And it falls into some of those little pitfalls, which aren't like problems for me. It always circles back to showcase the important pieces of their character arc. And kind of the realization of, why did Joan fall in love with us in the first place? Why did she stay in love with us? Why did she stay grieving? Why were all these things factors? And I think that is one thing that's kind of going to be an eye-opening for many people who watch this movie, who maybe are not in the best relationship. And it's like, why am I with this person? And for me, like, I got to take my wife to see this, and it was a fantastic date night movie. But like my biggest takeaway from this movie, which is something I already knew, but like it just felt like even more upscaled to a whole other degree, was that like that my wife is my eternity. There is no one else. There is nothing else to that factor. And I thought that the fact that this movie played on that and made you ask those questions like, why does my wife love me? What made her fall in love with me? It's all those little things that you kind of start to rekindle and you kind of see. And I think what's so cool about here is you will find a character to relate to in one way or another. And again, I think some of that stems just because of how spectacular their chemistry is in here, how incredible and moving the film can be. And I genuinely think that this is a rom-com that will genuinely become a classic for years to come because of how funny it is, but also at the same time how poignant and emotional it is. So all that stems because of the acting in here, but I also do need to give a shout out to the director in here, David Frayne. Well, I think he did an amazing job directing this movie. Again, finding that sweet spot in every single one of the moments, any single one of the choices, any single one of the moments of monologues, because it's a romantic comedy, so you got to have those sincere and perfect monologue moments, but also like those moments of finding the dramatic avenue of what you need to showcase into these steps. To me, that was like maybe the strongest piece about the movie. I went into this movie thinking it was going to be enjoyable, but I did not expect to come out of it being like, wow, that was one of my favorite films of the year. Even one of my favorite romantic comedies ever. Like, I want to rewatch this movie immediately. Like, also going back to Miles Teller's character, like, I just felt so relatable to him in so many different avenues, specifically in the way that, like, what his main purpose is and what he realizes by the end of what he wants. And, like, that for me was just like hit so hard because I've been there. The movie's just incredibly charming with all the other actors alongside it. Because I think Divine Joy Randolph is absolutely hilarious in this movie and also kind of sweet at the same time. Same thing goes for John Early, who is also pretty damn hilarious, but at the same time sweet. And that's like my biggest thing, is that this film is just a very sweet story. It's one that doesn't break the boundaries, but also at the same time, like, can leave you with a little bit of thought process to kind of churn out. And for me, it's is one of the most sincere things I've seen this year in terms of every single moment. It's all wrapped around a very high concept idea. It just works. Like, the way they explain how eternity works, all these different worlds, how like you're stuck in one, and like how that could be like your own personal hell, and like in some way, shape, and form, I think the way that they crafted it just feels right. From the cinematography to the production design to the score, I don't know. All I know is that it just swept me off my feet and just kept me engaged the entire way through. Leads me to say that honestly, the only nitpick that I have with the film is the ending, which is not a bad ending by any means, but it kind of just ends. And I liked where it ended, but I felt like more of my issue was the build up to the end. I think the last 10 to 15 minutes feels a tad bit rushed in terms of what it was trying to execute. And a certain concept that's kind of hinted out throughout the entire film is finally executed. And once it happens, I was expecting that a little bit more of ramifications to happen in that selective circle. But with that said, I genuinely think A24's Eternity might be one of my favorite romantic comedies ever. It perfectly nails that sweet spot between being a high concept idea about choosing your forever one. I laughed, I cried, and I was completely swept up about how beautiful it all came together. So all said, I'm going to give Eternity a 4.5 out of 5. Thank you so much again, guys, for watching this. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, comment down below your guys' thoughts, and of course, until next time, stay classy.